Draft physics video. Yay. So anyway, the last couple of videos, the likes to dislikes are kind of funny. 1 to 17 dislikes. So I'll just take that as yes, keep doing what you're doing. Yes, because you're bothering somebody. Fine. Whatever. Uh, don't really get it myself, frankly. Arguing for principles like better oversight and more extensive deliberation and conversation. I was thinking about that in the early days of physics, at least even when quantum mechanics was starting to develop. There was more communication between physicists. They argued with each other a lot. I think because it was a smaller community of people, and somehow, because of that, everybody knew everybody's business more, and everybody was more paid more attention to what was being suggested, and I guess um, they all felt connected to what was being produced as a standard model, or what the truth was going to be, or what the premises of physics were going to be, and they saw that debate as the viable debate, and and that's all been kind of lost with time. More physicists, less communication between them, less scrutiny over each other's work. Um, and also, I guess it's like anything, as the field gets bigger and bigger, it gets all these subdivisions, and everybody has their specialties, and there's just no general practitioners anymore, kind of a thing. So anyway, I'll deal with some comments, and then I want to get to a specific subject. Again, it's back to that radar thing. Just because somebody brought up in a comment, and again in a snarky manner, that I think is unnecessary, but whatever. I mean, I did a video devoted to the subject, no comments on that video, where I asked specific questions and got no answers. And then he puts a comment on another video. That's, that's not even a rational way to play the game. But anyway, so let's do some more of this alternative case bullshit. He posted a bunch of comments on the video. You say the image, there's some error in the comment, for the measurements of the speed of gravity are too wide. By that logic, why would you concede that the speed of gravity is consistent? I wouldn't. I just said that the experiment was silly. 25% margin of error is a silly experiment. It's okay to do it, but you can't use it for anything. 25% margin of error is just too monstrous. I say all the other experiments demonstrate the consistency. The fact that we communicate with our satellites reliably, even ones all the way on Mars. Clearly, there was a consistent speed to the transmissions of information. So, all the other evidence supports a consistent speed to light. There's no evidence that creates any doubt. Okay, again, this is the same dogma. It's not a dogma. It's based on volumes of observations that verify it. This isn't some invisible God theory. There's a ton of evidence for the speed of light being around 3 million meters per second. Per second. It's not arguable. Dogma as reinforced from the speed of light assumptions. Well, again, there were never assumptions. There were calculations and done through experiments. So, and they're just that, assumptions, period. No, they're not. They're experiments, asshole. I mean, you can make bold claims that you're the one sitting there just making empty, non-evidence-based claims. That's a religion. That's a dogma. Let's see. There have been no reliable measurements of the speed of light. Again, it's just retarded. There's all kinds of evidence. Every time they shoot a laser at the moon and reflect the light back, there's verification of the speed of light. I mean, you're just being fucking retarded. Do you think wheelbarrows make the cut? What does that even mean? Little evidence, just assertions. No, a ton of evidence. Just tons and tons of evidence. Our own communications, radio, all kinds of evidence of the speed of the transmission of electromagnetic radiation. You're just being a fucking retard. You have no case. No, you have no evidence. So you have no case. And that's that. Done. Zip. Yeah, well, fuck off then. I'm just gonna block you for that kind of shit. Fuck it. I'll delete that, and then I'll just block you. I mean, fuck you. You can't make an argument. There's no evidence for the consistency of the speed of light. Faith does not count as evidence. Well, again, what's your evidence for the speed of light not being consistent? Oh, that's right. You have absolutely zero evidence of an inconsistency in the speed of light. Alright, so just fuck off. Oh, there was one more. Again, you have miscommunication. You say that everything pivots off of this mysterious consistency. It's not mysterious. I mean, in a reasonable sense, it's not. It's not mysterious in the sense that if you allowed something to go some sort of ludicrous speed, like instantaneous, then the whole universe might end. Yeah. So it would have implications, idiot. Everything else moves some percentage of the speed of light. You see the speed of light by being slow. See, even though it's really, really fast, it's the first slow thing. And as soon as you have a slow thing in the universe, then you can have a slower thing, and then a slower thing, and then a slower thing, and then a slower thing. You see? So you're given almost an infinite capacity to go slower. And that's what makes the universe. The universe couldn't exist without something going slow. Some amount of slowness is essential for there to be something existing. You dumbass. Alright, you say that consistency. The matter to seconds conversion unit, whatever that even means, yet no evidence is provided to show that matter itself is based off this function of sorts. Well, I think there is evidence that the electromagnetic energy, the photons, they're called virtual photons by the physicists, are essential to the function of the guts of an atom. That's what keeps the electrons not inside the protons. That's what keeps things in a balanced tension. And so if you change the momentum of those little bits, then you radically alter the function of the atoms, and they're no longer going to be consistent, and water won't be water anymore, and all that kind of stuff. You just kind of break all the chemistry. As I see it, who the fuck could care how you see anything? And as others might catch on as well, other lunatics who are probably writing this with a gun in their hand or something, you use your own theory to reconcile your own assumptions. Well, again, they're not assumptions, they're evidence-based, highly probabilistic to be true facts. Facts that are pretty durable, I would say. Pretty good chance of durability. So to put it in other words, you have employed abductive reasoning to support your own presupposed conclusions. So again, these are just bullshit accusations. Like I said, I didn't go into this with any fondness for any kind of, oh, light moves the same speed. I couldn't give a rat's ass one way or the other. Why do you think I care how fast light moves? It really wasn't critical to anything, of mine anyway, of my theories. But I'm just saying that it seems pretty clear that this is a fact, because frankly, if you start messing with it, you can see there's all kinds of implications that would arise. All kinds of things would break. Shit. And shut off other dissenters who have real questions to bring into the table. You don't have any questions. You're the one with the fucking assertions. You're making the claim that it's an undeniable fact that there's no evidence that light moves at a consistent speed. When, like I said, almost every experiment you walk into provides evidence of the consistency because it works. But clearly, there's no inconsistency in the movement of planets. You know, they do all that shit pretty fucking reliably, and they do it partly because the speed of the forces moving them is consistent. Idiot. Alright, let's see. You have not refuted the non-consistency of the speed of light. Well, I don't really, like I said, is that really my job to provide you evidence of something that's, like, so overwhelmingly experimentally demonstrated? I mean, it's not my specialty, but you know, I'm really just for you. You're saying I have to go out and compile a whole bunch of experimental evidence to demonstrate to you in some manner the fact that the speed of light is consistent. I don't care. You wish to believe otherwise, go ahead and believe otherwise. I, as a rational person, am going to recognize the volumes of evidence, and in creating my own theory, I can recognize that, you know, nothing could possibly work without that consistency, because all the equations, the inverse square law, all kinds of things break if you start breaking the momentum of photons, the quantizable nature of the force. Shit. Let's see. You have brought more skepticism into the consistency of the speed of gravity. And in fact, so he says, okay, non-consistency of the speed, and in fact you have brought more skepticism into the consistency of the speed of gravity. And I did that how? Your reply to David was not immaculate, but only immature. So, again, how so? Again, like I said, if David wishes to, you know, it seems like all of this energy comes from the fact that you think Einstein declared the speed of light to be constant. And he didn't do any such thing. He didn't declare the speed of gravity to be constant. All he did was do the rational thing and recognize that the force of gravity is moving the same speed as the speed of light. And that all the forces end up doing that. Magnetism likewise. And because they're all the same thing by my theory, obviously. So I don't know what can I say? Fuck you. That's what I'll say. Yeah, that seems like that's more than enough. So I'll probably get, you know, 15 downvote for that. It's, you know, because I told some fucking kook to kook off. Alright, I'll do these other two before I get to this Petros guy. So some idiot says Prince Polka. So he gives a time code and then says, I'm on Twitch Dan's game. So first he thinks I'm supposed to know what Dan's game is on Twitch, which I visited the website once. You know, I did make an account, I think. And yes, that was it. When I found out it's the same exact thing as YouTube, I said, well, this is stupid. Anyway, he gives a time code. So I'm supposed to go back to the video, listen to the video to see how this is relevant somehow. And this was in the video, I think, is the interview video. I mean, yes, be irrationally pointless in your comments. Thank you. Oof. Alright, then, Tango Sierra. Mr. Draft Science. That's, you know, if the world had more people with your dedication and astounding patience, well, obviously I don't have much patience, finding purpose and reasoning in sifting through and tearing down endless tons of gold-plated bullshit, we'd be hundreds of years ahead of where we are now, I didn't say the now part. Great stuff. Well, thank you. Blah, blah, blah. Usually don't read the good comments. Sorry. My mistake. Alright, so to the Petros guy. Petros Adamorphos. Anyway, your suggestion is pretty ironic. Fuck you. Considering that diffraction of radio radar waves by slits or mountains, etc., is the easiest thing to do. Says you. So why don't you show me the experiment? And again, that's not what we're talking about, are we? We're just talking about two antennas. There's no mountains, no reflections, no other mechanisms to deflect the radar. So how exactly is this applicable to the argument being made? Oh, that's right, it's not at all. Yeah, thanks. Anyway, longer wavelengths can bend around obstacles like sound. Says you. Where do you do? Give me some evidence of that. What I understand they can do is reflect off obstacles. Okay? Bing, bing, bing. You know, bing, 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 bing. And get to places. Like they can reflect actually off the atmosphere. That happens. That's what long wavelengths will do for you. Let's see. Obstacles like, so it's not like sound. And come back to you. It's not how the two-slit experiment is usually demonstrated. It has nothing to do with it in principle. Again, we're talking about two transmitters. There's no slits. There's no mountains. There's no needles. There's no nothing. Because it's invisible light. Yes, well, light is also invisible. Newsflash. Not so popular. Not very visual, you see. They could make it visual. There's no obstacle to making it visual. So, but that's the whole trick here, is the hardware is the whole thing in doubt. The whole thing that is what the argument's about, is how you're detecting the radiation and whether your detector is capable of seeing what's actually there. Now, I mean, I could make the argument that two-slit experiment, you could say, theoretically, let's say the light was interfering with itself and it was off phase, and so that's why you didn't see it, is because it was destructive interference. But the light was still there, but it was destructively interfering, which basically means it was doubling the frequency, right? So every space between two things, two waves, got filled with a new peak. So there was peak, 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 peak. So it doubles the frequency. But we could disprove that pretty easy, because you just shoot red light in, okay, at 750 nanometers, let's say, and you'd end up with almost a visible blue light at 350, 380. So you'd have a visible blue in exchange for, well, 380 would be around green, actually, right? So, yeah, so you'd be comfortably in the visible range. So anyway, so obviously that's not happening. So there's no light plus light equals no light, which in the case of the radar experiment is exactly what's happening. It's radar plus radar off phase equals you can't detect it. The radar's still there, you just can't receive it as the same frequency radar. Okay, that's what I'll draw. Usually, probably, mostly. Demonstrated because it's not visible light. Not so popular, not very visual, you see. It might be hard to detect one radio photon at a time. Why? I mean, you have some good reason why that would be hard to do. I don't think there's any good reason why that's hard to do. But anything weird visible light can do, radio will do it easier and better. We put that in both, anything. So, and he says it's weird because that's what he says it is. Because it was weird to his people. His people found it weird. But anyway, I just, frankly, it just isn't true. So, but anyway, fine. Yes, it interferes with itself. So in the light experiment, it's a single photon creating another representation of itself to interfere with. Now that's clearly not happening in the radar experiment. I mean, do you really think that's happening? And that's what the single radar photon experiment would demonstrate, is that's not what's happening. Something completely different is happening. So you're saying it has wave properties like water waves, and it has sub-wave. Each little water molecule has its own wave property. That's the kind of crap you're arguing. Every water molecule has a wave property now. I mean, you're so full of this wave crap that you don't even know where you've created completely different functional dynamics. You know, in the light experiment, it's single photons interfering with themselves, and now you're saying, but with radar, it's groups of photons interfering with groups of photons. No single photons involved. It's just the group behavior now. You see? Just doesn't make any sense. You're just changing goalposts. Alright, yes, it interferes with itself. Well, obviously, like I said, in the radar experiment, there's nothing interfering with itself. There's a beam of radar and a beam of radar interfering with each other. For a lack of a different wording all the time. Yeah, I'd say it's completely wrong. So you got 4 likes for that. 4 thumbs up. For a comment, first off, it should be on the other damn fucking video. Okay? The video with the questions on it that haven't been answered by any of you lame-os. Oh yeah, it's not on here. It's number 9. Okay, in the group of videos. I don't remember the exact title, but yeah, that's what your fucking comment should be, asshole. Why don't you address some of the points made in that video instead of making comments that don't address any of the points I actually made. So yeah, fuck you. Alright, so let's do a little bit of this. So what I would argue, when Professor Lewin said in the beginning, in his video, well, we could make the 2 radars. So let's just understand what we're talking about. I don't really want to do this context every time, so you're really going to have to go watch the other videos or just not watch this video. So you have 2 radar emitters, and then you have a detector you can move to different locations. All right. And so Professor Lewin basically said, look, if we take these 2 waves and put them out of phase at the start, okay, so this one's going down and then up, then this will be dead. Nothing here. Nothing. So radar plus radar equals nothing right in the middle. So that's what we would are to believe. And we're to believe that that happens, so that it's actually no radar gets here. When I would argue what's obviously happening, sensibly, is that sure, the radar is getting here, and what's happening is the detector, okay, that's good at detecting signal, okay, the signal comes in this way, and it hits the antenna. And so let's understand that what that represents is a number of photons. So 100 photons hit, and then there's a time delay, and then 100 hit, and then there's a time delay, and then 100 hit, and just time delay. And so when they're out of phase, what's just happening is whoa, you're sticking one right in between the middle here. So now you've doubled the frequency. And so you have 100 photons, 100 photons, 100. So you've doubled the frequency, and there's every evidence that this detector, the whatever, the electronics, okay, aren't gonna be able to deal with that as being 2 of these. It's not going to say, oh, I understand, that's 2 different radio signals at the frequency I like. Even though this would be technically a harmonic of this frequency, the receiver is already built to get rid of high band and low band filters. It gets rid of all the harmonics. It only wants one frequency, this one. Okay, and that's the only one it can, that's the only it can deal with. So there's every evidence that it would wipe out any signal that, even if it recognized this frequency, it would say, the high band thing would say, no, we don't want any of the harmonics. We just want this. This is the only frequency we care about. So you got to understand, this is essentially a cancellation. This is just basically jamming the signal, because it can't glean the information. And if it could, what it's going to see is, also you got to recognize that if it did pull this, it's the sense that it's going, yes, it's saying, it's going to compare, this is the dead, see, it compares ons and offs. And if the ons and offs are both 100, okay, when they're out of phase, 100 minus 100 is 0. It's just not going to receive any signal. It's just going to say no signal. So it's not going to be able to read whatever you have, whatever other thing you've put on top of this. You're not going to be able to read it because the base signal has been lost. But both of these radars are going to hit this. They're just going to be indecipherable by the receiver. The receiver is not going to be able to pull this one out or this one out independent of each other. And but you could make a receiver that can. So you could just measure the voltage in the antenna, okay, period, because this signal is going to be really strong. So it's going to wipe out, like there's going to be all kinds of noise from the rest of the universe, but that noise is going to be 1,000 times, or maybe even 10,000 or 100,000 times less strong than these guns just merely 2 meters away from this receiver. So this signal is going to be incredibly strong. So you'll just be able to measure the voltage, the actual voltage running through the antenna. You know, there'll be you'll be able to measure just as a hard voltage, and maybe even just turn on a light bulb with it, a little tiny light bulb, a little low voltage, you know, 1.1 volt kind of bulb, a little flashlight bulb. But the fact is, you could use more sophisticated electronics and have a meter, for example, a little voltmeter, and you could measure exactly, you know, what your strength of the signal coming in is, and because this will be the dominant signal. And I'll bet you, okay, if you did do the experiment that way, you'd get a full reading here, and you get a full reading, full reading, full reading, full reading, all the way across, and be no sign of any interference anywhere. Because the interference is just happening because you're jamming your own signal by having these different phases. So if you have them in the same phase, the dead signal is here. You have them at different, as completely 90-degree different phases, then yes, your dead space is here. You can just move it wherever you want to by just changing the phases relationships between the two transmitters. And all you're doing is changing where the jam location is. And that's all you're doing. There's no radar plus radar equals no radar. There's just radar you can't see, okay, because the frequency has been broken. The detectability has been damaged. And certainly its detectability using a AM receiver, using a receiver designed to pull off the wave being carried, okay, by the carrier wave, that's certainly going to fail because it's designed to fail. It's designed not to hear things at the wrong frequency. Yeah, so, you know, it's just more evidence of the, you know, I'll leave a link below to video number 9. That one has the questions on it, plus this point I'm just raising here, that this experiment can't be used as evidence of waves interfering with each other in space, because the obvious answer is your detector is jammable, and this just has to do with distances from two receivers, and the fact that yes, in parallel they will go out of parallel and they will jam each other logically, but there's not no signal, there's just no decipherable signal. Fact. As the two-slit thing will be demonstrated to be a fact, as I have already pointed out, it seems like it's enough evidence just on its face that when you look at the two-slit experiment, let's say the single slit, and that you have the classic drawing of what you see. I never even thought about it, but there's absolutely no explanation for this effect. Why aren't these slits shaped like this? Why are they pointy at the ends? Why do they do that? Where is that in the math? Why is that? Yeah, and the answer to why it is because this is the top of the round beam and this is the bottom of the round beam, and all that's being accomplished is this part has been stretched. So it's been stretched this way, and that's the distortion. But it's basically just it wants to just be, okay, the little the beam, just as it is in diffraction gradients. And the only thing that's happened is it's deflecting a lot more when the light is near the slits, the edges, and that's why this effect is happening. But anyway, it's not explained by the math, it's not explained by Huygens, it's not explained by any element of their theory, and it seems like little things like that, little obvious things like that, that's what I mean by there hasn't been any real scrutiny. Nobody has spent like a week going over this stuff. No physicist, right, has been doing like Einstein did and Bohr and all those guys. They took each other's shit and they sat there for a week and they fiddled with it and said, how could this shit work? You know, but apparently no one's done that with any of this stuff. I mean, this was around back then, so I don't know exactly why. Einstein did seem kind of casual about the whole two-slit thing. He didn't seem to take much interest in it. It seems like it would have been ripe for somebody doing some analysis and saying, how does this explanation actually make sense? Light plus light equals dark. How do the photons know? Look, in waves, it's not that the energy doesn't keep going. It's that the energy is completely compensated for by an equal and opposite energy. You can't do that with photons. You have to actually change their location, where they're going to land. Waves aren't really doing that. Anyway, so we still have the problem of the signal problem, where when there's two transmitters on and they're in phase, that you get a signal that's 4 times louder. And that has to be something mechanical in the fact that the antenna signal somehow has to be doing that multiplying. So somehow 2 of these has to equal this big thing happening. 4 times bigger. And that we still don't have an answer for. So anyway, there's enough for a video, I guess. So yeah, I have to do some 2-slit experiments. I'm just going to do some obvious stuff. You know, just put a needle in front, do some different things, put some tape edges, or do whatever. I just don't have any enthusiasm. But it seems clear. I almost want to get the answer first. If I prove that the little bars that you see in the pattern of the 2-slit, if I prove that these are actually images of the slits, will you people concede anything? Or will you just make excuses? I mean, I'd like to get a feel for what your excuses are going to be. Because there's no way to make Huygens do that. There's no way to make a wave tank do that. There obviously has to be a completely different explanation for what's happening. It really can't have anything to do with wave mechanics, because wave mechanics don't move 4 separate images or 10 separate images to all the locations. Wave mechanics won't do that. So what's your counter argument? If I prove it to be true.